All right, welcome back to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head. I am your host, Dr. D. Today, we are talking about preparedness beyond sheltering in place. So grab yourself your favorite beverage. Let's get at it. All right, thanks again for joining us. And a shout out once as we start every episode. A big thank you for all of you listening out there in cyberspace. Irrespective of whatever device or program you're listening to this podcast on, we appreciate your feedback. Please drop over to our website, www.insidemycanoehead.ca. Everything you need is there. Shout out, tell us what you think, good, bad, or indifferent. Everything that you believe you want to hear on this podcast should be left there. We appreciate it. Thanks again. And welcome to today's chat about sheltering in place and moving far beyond that. The goal of today's episode is to lay out why preparedness, as most people understand it, is limited to the initial 20%. If we were to poll the population and most people listening to this podcast, you probably think that preparedness is about natural disasters, response to emergencies, and things along that time. You know, having the things that your government's resident-facing public sector preparedness communications talks to you about having a plan, be informed, and have a kit. Now, I have railed for years against that message that has gone out because it's designed to create and train victims, right? You're going to get hurt. You're going to get impacted. You're going to be disrupted. And so here's how you be a good victim. And it's not that the advice is poor. Well, some of it is. But the advice is designed to tell you to take a knee, as an old Army phrase used to say. To get down, to be a victim, to get punched, to take the punch, and wait until the big magical government comes along and rescues the day and restores situation. You can get up, wipe off your injuries, and carry on with your day. That's the impetus behind what we do today in the preparedness communications from the public sector, is that we talk about those limited ideas of shelter in place, having a plan, be informed, and have a kit. We always call it the initial 20% because really what it does is it sets the foundation. Now, here at Inside My Canoe Head and our parent company, Preparedness Labs Incorporated, we developed a education strategy based upon well over a decade of research, zeroed in on family and individual preparedness and what it actually entails. And we actually do the same, a similar strategy in that we believe there needs to be a shelter in place plan. Because really, when we're looking at it, a grand overview, you're probably going to remain at home during an emergency, right? There is a very few set of circumstances, and we'll get to those in a second, where you and your family are actually going to be uprooted from your home for a limited or an extended period of time. That probability is not zero, but it is fairly small. So understanding what a shelter-in-place plan looks like from a position of thriving, from a position of being able to carry on and continue to execute your normal day throughout whatever the shock is, no matter whether it's a power outage, whether it's, some type of local disaster or something happens. The idea of preparedness is not just to survive, because everybody does that, other than a handful of unfortunate people that get caught in the middle of the calamity. Really, let's be honest, people survive. It's about having a quality of life, about thriving through that issue. We frame it on your animalistic requirements, and we look at food, water, shelter, health, safety, and security as your 6 animalistic requirements as a human animal. How do you get those up to the level where no matter what the disruption is, you're staying constant, right? You're eating the same, you're continuing to work the same, you're continuing to live the same. All of that carries on irrespective of what's going on. So yeah, a shelter-in-place plan, we look at it differently, right? Then we take your education to something we call the trifecta of preparedness plans. Because the reality is, when you look at the hazard profile, now the hazard profile is that list of all of the things that could go wrong in your area. We've said this repeatedly on the podcast that Unless you live in a communist or socialist country, you choose to live where you do once you become an adult, right? You're living in the town you do, you have the right to leave. So you've made the conscious decision to live where you do. And by doing so, you have made the conscious decision, deliberately or otherwise, to accept the risks that go along with living there. So it's your responsibility to be informed about those risks and understand what happened. The difficult challenge we have is that when we have a lot of risks and we have a lot of possible hazards that could be realized and a number of things that could probably happen in the area where you've chosen to live, it becomes difficult to overcome. It breeds apathy and avoidance because there's so many things to worry about that I'm just not going to worry about it, and I'm going to deal with it as I go. Now, some people with a high degree of self-efficacy, that's exactly how they approach it. They have a very high risk tolerance. In fact, they may actually enjoy not preparing for events so that they can just rapidly figure out their way through it. But the vast majority of people are not like that. That's not how we think, right? So with the trifecta of preparedness plans, we understand that everything that can happen to you is on a spectrum. On the left hand of the spectrum, you will have the most likely but the least dangerous. And on the right hand of the spectrum, you're going to have the most dangerous and the least likely. And if we set you up for success so that you're reasonably capable of living and rocking an incredible life in the middle of both those events, then everything that would happen in the middle that you are to a necessary degree ready and prepared for. And so we talk about power loss as being the most likely, least dangerous, and evacuation as being the most dangerous and least likely. Because as I said before, the significant number of times, the number of people evacuated from their home is actually fairly small considering the number versus the number of people exposed to a hazard. When you look at it as a percentage per capita basis, it's very, very small. And the majority of those who leave come back very, very quickly. It's only a very small percentage of people who actually have a significant or prolonged evacuation from their home. So it is a unlikely, highly unlikely, but exceptionally impactful. So it's probably. The third trifecta of preparedness plans is where we call it opening the door to the next 80%. What is, in our definition, based upon the research that I've done well over the last decade in individual and family preparedness, is the significant preparedness lies in the next 80%. And that's income loss. And this is not talked about in the emergency management field because for some reason, they think preparedness is related to natural disasters, or they get mad when I talk about natural disasters, whatever, get over it. That's what they think it is, right? They just think it's about disasters and fires and floods and earthquakes and things like that. But I'll tell you right now, look at what we went through in the pandemic. Look at a family. When any family abruptly and without notice loses access to their primary income stream without having an immediate replacement plan, that is as impactful as them losing their house to a fire. It's that impactful for a family, especially in today's economic conditions where quite a number of families are living very close to the line, paycheck to paycheck, and some of them are running out of money before they run out of month. And to take away that income abruptly and not have anything to replace it with, I'm going to argue with you, is more impactful than losing your house to a fire. And this is where we use income loss as asking people. We do this on the podcast, we do it in our books, we do it in the video course, and we do it in one-to-one mentoring with clients. Very simple. What is your plan when you get fired? How do you intend to replace that income? That is something you need to have right now. I don't care what job you're in. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what field you're in. It doesn't matter what you're doing. And it doesn't matter how much emergency fund you have. And that's going to shock people. What are you going to do to replace that income? That's your responsibility. It's not the government's job to cut you checks to cover the interim. It is your responsibility to have an income loss plan in there. And when we start talking about that, a lot of the clients and the people that we work with will sit back and pause for a second. And when you start talking about that, they realize that the significant level of preparedness lands beyond the initial 80%. And it begins with community. I have done near almost a decade as well of research into the phenomena of social capital, the relationships that people have and the power and the resources embedded in those relationships. And it begins with community. It's all about building trust, networks of norms of reciprocity, common values, and it's all orientated towards a better post-event outcomes. Humans are tribal. We've been that way forever, and we always will be. It's part of being a species on Earth. We work well together, and your best asset in any emergency management situation is your neighbor. It is the humans around you, and those are the people who are going to pull you out of the rubble. Those are the people who are going to bring you supper in an emergency or when you've had a significant loss in the family. It is your community that is the most important variable that leads to successful post-event outcomes. And this is data and research. This isn't my opinion, and frankly, you shouldn't care whether it's my opinion or not. The research clearly shows the single most important variable that leads to better post-event outcomes across the spectrum of possible hazards is community. It is your sense of belonging. It is your sense of place. It is your embedded and your connectedness with the other people around you, and it is your predisposition to help other people. Your sense of community, place, and value is the greatest variable and the greatest asset you have to lead to better post-event outcomes. That's not talked about in emergency preparedness communications. Now, I will give credit to some jurisdictions are starting to talk about the power of community and starting to lead the discussion to where the individuals look to their community for support and not to the government. Now, it's not that the government doesn't have a role. It's not that the public sector emergency management doesn't have a role. It most certainly does. But they're not coming to save you, and they can't come to save you. It's just improbably, logistically near impossible, and statistically near zero odds that you will be fortunate enough to be one of the people that gets rescued. The idea is it's your community that will do that. And once we start with that and your income loss, people start to realize that the initial shelter in place, as important a grounding as it is in preparedness, it is literally the foundation, but it is a mere 20%. Now we start talking about the different levels. We start talking about exogenous shocks across political, economic, familial, and cultural disciplines. Now, preparedness is about your ability to navigate political shocks, right? I live in a democracy. My friends in the United States live in a republic with representative government. And if you don't understand the difference, Google it. It's a fantastic read. The point is that I have a say in who my government is. I do not have the final say, right? And whether or not I agree with what my fellow citizens have done in an election campaign, I have to learn to live with what I want. You hear people like, oh, that's not my president, it's not my prime minister. Well, in fact, it is, dude. I really don't care what your personal opinion is, and most people don't either. The point is that you have to learn how to navigate and be successful in an environment where your political views and your political party are not in power, and in fact, they may be seen as pariahs within the community. How do you do that? What steps of preparedness do you need to take to insulate your family, your professional operations from shocks that are beyond your control in the political sphere, in the economic sphere, in the familial sphere, and in the cultural sphere? We're in a bit of a cultural warfare. You also have the possibility of the next pandemic coming around in a not too distant future. And when that's launched, you will have an issue of where you have a good portion of the population that will suspect what the government is doing, will challenge any of the rules. The vaccine, if there is a vaccine uptake for the next one, will be far lower than before. And then you'll have a lot of different combative models in different areas of the country you live. The idea of preparedness is not that you're going to fight that. This is not about picking a team and trying to pick a winner. It's about you understanding your goals and what you're trying to achieve and how you still do that while these things are going on around you, right? Look at the pandemic. People who had economic pivot plans, people who had sat down and thought this through, people who had embraced preparedness as a whole of life strategy did exceptionally well in the pandemic. Yeah, they were fired, but they had a plan. They had an immediate pivot plan. They swung fire left, swung fire right for my Army guys and gals out there. And they executed that plan, and they did very, very well. In fact, many number of them are far better off economically now than they would have had the pandemic not occurred, because they had preparedness, because preparedness was part of their economic strategy, right? So you think about that, and people, I often hear, well, that has nothing to do with preparedness. And I'm like, yeah, it probably doesn't, the way you frame preparedness as thinking about getting ready for a flood or a fire or an ice storm or something along that. But what if I was to offer you this? And this is the module that we're adding to our Adopt a Prepared Life course that's available on preparednesslabs.ca. We're launching the next module in the following month. It'll be out by the end of July, and it's about building personal strategic goals. What is your 1, 3, and 5 year plan for you? In a couple of spheres, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But when you think about, if you're not working towards something, then you're just consuming oxygen and waiting for no more oxygen to be available for you, right? Everybody should have a strategic goal. This is an essential cornerstone of your personal preparedness plan for you and your family. Why are you here, and what are you trying to achieve? Because, and I'll give you an example, and this is a personal example, and this is where I learned. When I arrived as a young lieutenant in my first posting as an officer in the Canadian Army, I showed up at a certain location with 7 other lieutenants. We had all just graduated our training course, got sent to the same base, and had an interview with our commanding officer as to what our plans were, what we intended to do, what roles we wanted to fill, etc. I was one of 2 within the 8 people who had a very specific strategy laid out and had a set of positions in order that I wanted to take, so it lead me to be best prepared to fill the role in my dream job at the time, and then what I intended to do after that. A very well laid out 5-year strategy for a brand new lieutenant staring at a lieutenant colonel, right? This is what I had. Guess what I got? I got every position in the year I wanted. And so did my counterpart who had a plan. What did everybody else do? They came along, oh, whatever I can do to help, however I can best serve. It doesn't matter. I just want to be a great service to you and the community. And that's fine. I understand the altruism behind it. And they got stuffed in a hole. They were a piece of paper or a pigeon stuffed in a hole, right? A hole needed to be filled, and here you were. So you filled hole number X, and they went down that. Myself and my colleague got the exact plan that we wanted executed because we showed up with the plan. We didn't need somebody to tell us, go away and make a plan and come back and tell me, right? That's not the way preparedness works, right? It's you understanding that this is your role and responsibility to execute, and you doing it. 1, 3, and 5 year plans coming out to you as a module in the Adopt a Preparedness course at the end of July. So it begins with the concept of adopting strategic thinking. This is ideas, goals, roadmaps, understanding and viewing the obstacles and barriers, conducting environmental analysis in the world in which you choose to operate. Who's there? What are they doing? Where are they doing it? When are they doing it? How are they doing it? And why are they doing it? So strategic thinking is about understanding from a totality perspective the world in which you operate, right? And so when we think about it, it goes along basically 3 lines. You think about your personal life, you think about your relationships with other humans, and then you think about your professional life. We'll get into a minute more of that. But as you choose to live where you do, and you choose to execute the profession you do, and you choose to have the group of surround yourself with certain humans as you do, understanding that environment and thinking strategically. This is what CEOs do, and this is why CEOs get paid what they do, because they have the ability to cognitively exist on a spectrum and realm that thinks about big ideas and goals. They're not, my professional career in the military was in logistics, right? CEOs are not worried about logistics. They hire great people to run logistics, because the logistics are day-to-day operational things that are executed, and the strategic thinking in logistics. But at the big level, you're thinking about ideas, goals, what's coming next, what opportunities exist. The difference is people often confuse it with strategic planning. Strategic planning, my friends, is the operationalization of the strategic thinking. When you've looked at the environment, when you've understood the environment, when you see everything that's out there, you start to lay out the pathway. We're going to go X. These are the goalposts we're going to set. These are the decision points. These are the off-ramps across the three spectrums, your personal, your relationship, and your professional spectrum, and you set out a plan. So we teach strategic thinking, then we teach strategic planning, and those are used to roll out your 1, 3, and 5-year plans. So, and at this point, a lot of people come to me and say, yeah, but that's not preparedness, dude. That's life planning. Well, I'm here to tell you that preparedness is a whole of life. Preparedness is the totality of physical and cognitive initiatives that permit the navigation of exogenous shocks. Exogenous shocks, by definition, are beyond your control, right? It's part of reflected in the Stoic philosophy of everything that happens in this world is divided into two spheres. One in which you control and one in which you don't. And what you control is actually minuscule compared to the world around you, right? You control very little. In reality, it's two things: what you say and what you do. Those are the only two things you can control. Everything else is part of the exogenous world. It's exterior to you. And while you may be able to influence it with opinion and thought, etc., you do not control it. So when shocks happen in there, the shock happened, you didn't do it, you didn't cause the event to occur, but the event impacts you. Preparedness is the physical and cognitive initiatives that you undertake to put a blanket of insulation between you and that possible exogenous shock, so that if and when it occurs, it has a limited to negligible effect on how you intend to execute your life. How do you intend to execute your roles and responsibilities within your personal, relational, and professional life, right? So strategic planning, strategic thinking, and then planning talks about your personal life. And we always talk about that kind of three things: your mental and physical, financial. That is 100% within your control, right? How much stress and anxiety you choose to live with is up to you, right? No, you don't turn it off on a day, and no, the answer is not zero. But there are ways and methodologies for you to first understand the stress and anxiety you've chosen to expose yourself to. And then there's how to develop a roadmap to reduce that, to limit it, to where it is no longer significantly impactful in your life. Physical. Your physical health, from your physical fitness to your diet to your sleep, that is 100% within your control, right? A lot of the times when the mental health starts to become under control, the physical health does as well, as a side benefit. But those things are within your control. What's your strategic plan? If you're overweight, you eat poorly, and you don't get great sleep, you can't get up tomorrow and fix that. It's not going to be done in a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, right? That's thinking. Understanding your ideas, your goal, your roadmap, the obstacles, the barriers that exist to becoming fit, the environmental analysis, what's going on around you that may impact your ability to do that, taking those thoughts, putting them into a strategic plan, operationalization, laying out the pathway, goalposts, and decision posts, all about physical health. Think about that. That's the strategy that you do when you decide, I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to eat the carnivore. I'm going to be a vegan. I'm going to eliminate processed food, whatever it is. But those are within your control. And so is financial, right? You have to run out of month before you run out of money. If you don't, that's your fault. And I'm being blunt about that, and I get lots of feedback saying, oh, but I'm impacted by this and this. It's too expensive. Rents are too high. Yeah, great. Whine away. It's your fault, right? Because you can design a life where you live below your means. You can design a life that ensures that you never, ever run out of money before you run out of month. Because remember, as one of Dave Ramsey's famous sayings on top of his baby step profile, which I think the man is brilliant, is there's really only one rule of money, right? If you spend less than you make, you will never need savings. Just think about that. Preparedness in the financial scope sets you up for when there's an exogenous shock that impacts in the short term your ability to make money. If you have a prepared financial world, then you just carry on and keep doing what you're doing because you use savings, other income streams, different strategies that you've pre-built to set yourself up for success. You've prepared. Your relationship models. I talk at length about spousal relationships here. 90% of the strengths and weaknesses and problems that you're going to have in life come from the singular choice of who's going to be your spouse, right? Full stop. Or ditching the spouse, whatever your choice may be. 90% of your strengths and weaknesses will come from that one decision. And then you have familial. You need a small circle of people, confident people, people you trust. Remember, if you're chasing a dream, whatever that dream may be, and it's your dream, so you can tell the rest of the world to pound salt. You could use something else, but this is a family podcast. If they disagree with it, right? You can give them the proverbial middle finger if somebody tells you your dream sucks and it's wrong, because that's BS. That is total BS, right? But surround yourself by people who are on the same roadmap as you. If you're thinking about making some serious goals, some initiatives, chasing a dream, and you surround about your people who are all working minimum wage and they're angry at the government because they don't give them enough checks, and that's your friend group, you are going to have significant barriers to being successful because that's who you've chosen to surround yourself with. Understanding your relationships, like I said, the key number one variable that leads to better post-event outcomes in preparedness is community, is people around you. Those relationships matter. That is going to be one of your key successes as you get on with chasing your dreams. And the last one is professional, right? Think about your 1, 3, and 5 year strategic ideas of where you want to be in the professional world, your employment, your reputation, your skill sets that you have. All of this matters, and all of that is up to you, right? Right now, somebody said when I started my PhD when I was 47 years old, somebody said, well, like, what are you doing? Like, why? Why are you going to spend the next 5 years doing this? And one of the lines that I had learned to say to people was, well, the next 5 years are going to pass by anyhow, so I might as well have a PhD, right? I didn't need to justify the rationale why I was doing it to anybody else but that small group of friends, spousal support, those type of trusted circles. Everybody else could pound salt and get the middle finger if they didn't understand why I was doing or they disagreed with what I was doing, right? It's my professional goals. That's all within your influence, and then preparedness circles it around. And then you think of a couple of last things we're going to talk about. One is mobility. When I think about mobility, the first thing in preparedness, people goes, oh, I got my car kit. I got my, I got my bug out bag. No, I'm talking about, as the nomad capitalist says, go where you're treated the best. Think about that across relationships, across your personal life, and across your professional life on the strategic roadmap of where you want to take this incredible journey you're on. Mobility is the key. And the thinking within mobility and preparedness is when you look at the landscape, when you look at the totality of the risk profile you're exposed to in the location you've chosen to live, you don't have to stay there, right? You don't have to live in Tornado Alley. You don't have to live on the coast of Florida where you get smacked with hurricanes. You don't have to live on a fault line in California, right? And you don't have to live low-lying river that floods. Those are choices you're consciously making. and you don't have to make those. Now, there isn't a place you can go with no risk, but if you don't want to deal with or manage through the risk that you're exposed to, you have mobility. Again, unless you're in a communist or a socialist country that doesn't allow you to be mobile, if you're in North America and Canada, United States, or Mexico, you have the ability to move around the country to avoid the risk hazard profiles. And that could be criminal, familial, political, economic. Remember, mobility is about mitigating the risks and moving yourself and your family and those for who you care for to an area that is less affected, to mitigate the effects of political change, of economic change. For example, people who believe in the left wing and the right wing, as they call it, or Democratic or Republican in the United States of America, understand that you have California and Florida as the two bastions of the different viewpoints in life. And irrespective of who's in the White House, you're pretty sure who's going to win the governorship of those two states. And if you have a significantly slanted view in one of them, you're going to live there, and you're going to be able to surround yourself by people who think like you. You're going to surround yourself who believe in what you do. You're going to be supported by a government who believes in what you do. And by location choice, you can make a whole different set of opportunities show up. So what are opportunities? Well, it's about leveraging that built community I talked about. It's about strategic thinking to identify before others do, to leverage your preparedness to pivot to a new roadmap. Remember, we often say that luck is the intersection of opportunity and preparation, of preparedness, right? And so we understand what preparedness is, but opportunities is leveraging that built community. And that means understanding the environment really well, because when you can think strategically to identify opportunities before everybody else sees them, because you've taken the time in strategic thinking to understand the environmental analysis around you, the obstacles, the barriers, and the roadmaps, and then overlaying that with your goals, when you understand that, you see opportunities emerge. You see the indicators of them. You sense them before other people do. That's preparedness, right? Again, preparedness is far more than your initial 20% shelter in place plan. A lot of people out there are quite happy with that. They're just happy to have their little go bags and to, their power out kits and all that other stuff. They're happy being professional victims and being impacted, hurt, and otherwise knocked off their life plan by a disaster. They look forward to the government coming in the day and saving it by either giving them money or turning everything back on, and everybody carries on. That's actually the majority of the viewpoint in preparedness. What we're here to tell you, and the idea of today's message was very simple. That's not how it has to be. If you really want to adopt a prepared life, you need to move into the next 80%. And over the rest of this year, as I said, we're rolling out the strategy, the 1, 3, and 5-year strategic outlook addition to our online course. By the way, when you sign up for the online course, it's a lifetime access. So as we add these modules, and we're going to add the relationship module, professional module, mobility operations. These are all being added over 2024 as we approach the end of the year. You have lifetime access, so you don't have to buy them again once you buy into the course. Right now it's on for $129 Canadian, a lot less American, with a $30 off coupon, and expires at the end of June. Drop over. The offer is on our website, www.preparednesslabs.ca. If you want to use preparedness as a strategic frame for life and not just a go bag or a bug out bag, we've got you. We've built an education system based upon research, non-apocalyptic education for rational people in the 21st century. Thanks again for joining us at Inside My Canoe Head. Drop us a line. Drop over to the website. We've got everything you need there. We've got, if you don't want to buy anything, that's perfectly fine. We've got a 3-page free family download there. We've got the Journal of Preparedness in Canada, which is our opinion journal that we started last year. It was a quarterly analysis. It's now been re-rolled into 3 times a year due to some conflict with a couple of other journals that are out there to try to smooth that space. The next issue will be coming out in September. And basically, it's a place where people can provide opinions. And if that you would like, we can also produce your peer-reviewed papers for those of you who are interested in that type of thing. So thanks again. Once again, drop me a line at jeff@preparednesslabs.ca. If you have an issue or want to talk about it, there's a communication message on the website to reach out to us. And the one thing, if you do nothing else, we simply ask, tell somebody about the podcast. It is free of charge. We have over 270 episodes. We're downloaded in 53 countries on 6 continents. Well over 10,000 downloads across this planet. We've been around 4 years. This is our public service for the community out there. It is free of charge. It always will be. And everything that we put in our paid products are in our free products. The benefit of a paid product, my friend, is it's summarized. It's all summarized in an easy place to read, but everything we do will continue to be free on this channel. Listen to us. Take care. Stay safe.